Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Austin, General Brown. Thanks so much for being here today. I wanted to ask you about what's happening in Israel and Gaza. I know many of my colleagues have already expressed discomfort at the idea of a Rafah invasion. I'd like to add my name to those who think that it would be disastrous, not only for Palestinian civilians, but also for Israeli security. But I wanted to actually ask you about U.S. weapons in Gaza and what kind of oversight we're doing. I know, Secretary Austin, you have been a real leader in holding our own military to account on civilian casualties. I have been really grateful to work with you and make sure that we in Congress are giving you the tools you need to implement the civilian harm mitigation and response action plan that you have championed. And I know you answered to one of my colleagues that, as we've seen in many places, civilian casualties, human rights abuses can actually lead to more recruitment and violent extremist ideology, the very thing that we're often trying to address when we are doing these kinds of counterterrorism operations. So with that in mind, I wanted to ask you about some of the specific incidents we've seen. And in particular, just yesterday, Amnesty International came out with a report citing multiple examples of Israel using U.S.-made weapons in violation of international humanitarian law. As you know, as outlined in National Security Memorandum 20, both the State Department and the Department of Defense are required to conduct assessments of whether U.S. weapons are implicated in such potential violations. And while I think we both agree that Israel has a right to defend itself, how it defends itself really matters. So I was wondering, has the Department of Defense, in coordination with the State Department or on its own, conducted any such assessments of the use of U.S. weapons as required by NSM 20?
Yeah, so the State Department has a lead in providing the assessment, and we will work with the State Department as they pull together that assessment. Yeah, so.
Okay, well, I will look forward to seeing that assessment. I think that, as the memorandum says, both departments have a responsibility. I just want to go through a few of the specific incidents that they outlined in the report. And again, the report just came out yesterday, so I'm sure you haven't had a time to pour through it yet. But I think it's important to point these out. So according to this Amnesty International report that came out yesterday, an Israeli strike on January 9th reportedly used a U.S.-made, U.S.-provided GBU-39 small-diameter bomb and killed 18 civilians. According to this report, there was no indication that the residential building hit could be considered a legitimate military objective or that the people in the building were military targets. Have we conducted any sort of assessment on this particular incident?
I am not aware of that particular incident, but certainly that is one of the things that I will engage my counterpart on, as I have engaged them on a number of other things before now that relate to what we're doing to ensure that we're being as precise as possible in terms of our targeting and what we're doing to protect civilians in the battle space. But in terms of that specific report that you just mentioned, I've not seen that. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like I said, it came out yesterday, so I didn't expect you to have read it yet. One other incident I just wanted to highlight that came out from that report was an incident from even earlier in the conflict in October of 2023. The report alleges that the Israeli military used U.S.-made Joint Direct Attack munitions, JDAMs, in 2 airstrikes on homes full of civilians that killed 43 civilians total, 19 children. Is this an incident that you are aware of, and if so, have we done any sort of assessment of it?
I am not aware of that specific incident, but again, I have encouraged Israeli leadership to investigate thoroughly any sort of incident like this where there's a report of a loss of life, civilian loss of life, and the Minister of Defense assures me that number one, they have the right, they have adequate targeting procedures, And number two, they will follow up and investigate if there is an issue.
I appreciate that. I think it's important that given that these are U.S.-made weapons, we don't only rely on Israeli investigations, but we actually do our own assessments as well. So I will look forward to following up with you on this. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield back the time that I do not have.
I think the gentlelady,